never expected to fall in love with my music teacher. But sometimes life has its own score and it plays a melody you can't ignore. This is my story. When I look back, I can still remember that tiny classroom, the smell of old wooden floors, and the way his music filled the air before I even noticed him. I was just a shy girl who never spoke up, never believed anyone could see me. And then he came along, my music teacher, and everything I thought I knew about love, about courage, about myself, changed forever. I wasn't ready, not then, but I couldn't stop feeling it. When I was 21, I lived a life that felt almost invisible. My apartment was tiny, one bedroom, a kitchenette, a balcony that overlooked the city streets below. I lived alone, surrounded by white walls, my possessions carefully arranged so that nothing felt messy, nothing felt alive. Most days, I woke at 6 in the morning, brewed a cup of black coffee, and sat at the small table in my kitchen, eating toast and staring out the window at people rushing to work, completely unaware of me. I worked at the local community college as a math tutor, a job I had chosen for stability rather than passion. Numbers made sense. People rarely surprised me. Equations were predictable. Life was predictable. And I liked it that way, or at least I told myself I did. Yet beneath the surface, there was a quiet longing I couldn't ignore. I wanted more than routine. I wanted something alive, something that would make my heart race, something that would make my world brighter than the dull gray of my apartment walls. It was a rainy Thursday when I first saw him. His name was Mr. Harrison James Harrison, but everyone called him Mr. Harrison, the music teacher. He was in his early 40s, tall, with silver threads running through his dark hair. He had an air of calm authority, but it wasn't intimidating, it was inviting in a way I couldn't explain. I remember standing in the doorway of the music room, my hands clenching the strap of my tote bag, watching him tune the grand piano. His fingers moved over the strings with a gentle precision, like he was coaxing a secret out of the instrument. And when he looked up, his eyes, deep and kind, met mine for a fraction of a second. I felt my heart skip a beat. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was only in the music building because the tutoring office had booked a conference room for a student who needed extra help with math. But the sound of the piano, soft, imperfect, alive, had drawn me in. I leaned against the doorframe, trying to make myself small, trying not to interrupt. But he smiled then, a small, almost shy smile, and gestured for me to come in. I froze for a moment, then stepped inside. That single gesture, simple and quiet, changed something in me. I didn't know it yet, but my life was about to shift. I didn't hear anyone come in, he said, his voice calm but warm. Are you here for tutoring? Yes. Yes, I stammered, my words clumsy. I'm Lena. I work in the tutoring office. He nodded, still smiling faintly. Ah, I see. Well then, I suppose I'll keep my music quiet until you're done with your work. His tone was light, but there was a gentleness to it that made me want to linger. I don't mind, I said before I could stop myself. He looked up, surprised, and that small corner of his mouth curved again. Really? Most people mind. Music can be distracting. I nodded. I like music. That was all I said, but it felt like I had revealed a secret, and perhaps I had, because from that day on, I found myself lingering near the music room, finding excuses to be there. Sometimes it was to deliver forms, other times it was simply to hear the faint notes spilling into the hallway. And every time I watched him work, watched him play, and I noticed things about him. The slight furrow of his brow when he was concentrating, the way he leaned close to the piano when he wanted to hear a note just right, the faint laugh that escaped him when a student hit a wrong key. I didn't think of it as attraction at first. I told myself I was just curious. But curiosity has a way of opening doors that reason cannot close. And before I knew it, I was caught in a quiet orbit around him, always careful not to get too close, always hoping for even the briefest glance in my direction. Weeks passed, and we began talking in small, incidental moments. He asked about my day, about the students I tutored, and I asked him about the music program, the recitals, the pieces he loved. He never shared too much about himself, only enough to hint at a life lived fully and quietly, a life with history and depth. I listened, absorbing his words, the timbre of his voice, the rhythm of his speech. And with each passing day, I felt something stir inside me, a warmth, a curiosity, a quiet yearning that I could neither name nor resist. One rainy afternoon, I stayed late to help a student who had been struggling with calculus. I left the tutoring office around 6, the campus nearly empty, the rain still falling in fine threads. As I walked past the music building, I saw the light on in the piano room. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear the faint notes of a Chopin nocturne. Without thinking, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. He looked up, startled, but then smiled. "Lena," he said, "it's late. You shouldn't be here." I, I couldn't help it, I whispered. "I like listening." He studied me for a moment, then gestured to a chair. "Sit," he said, and I did. And for the next hour, we didn't talk much. I sat in the corner and he played. The room was small, the rain tapping against the windows, and for a few hours the world outside ceased to exist. It was just him, the piano, and me. I left that night with wet hair, a racing heart, and a strange sense of peace. Something inside me had shifted. I didn't understand it, but I didn't try to analyze it. I only felt it. As days turned into weeks, our interactions grew. He began to ask about my life outside work, small details that mattered to no one else but me. My favorite coffee, the book I had been reading, the way I sometimes hummed while grading papers. I noticed, with a thrill I tried to hide, that he remembered. Not just remembered, but seemed to care. It wasn't instant attraction. It was subtle, like sunlight filtering through clouds. I didn't realize I was falling in love with him until one evening, weeks later, when he handed me a sheet of music he had composed. "I thought you might like this," he said softly. I looked at the notes, then at him, and felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the music itself. It was the gesture, the thoughtfulness, the quiet attention. I wanted to tell him, to confess that my feelings had grown far beyond admiration or curiosity. But I didn't. I only nodded, smiled, and tucked the paper carefully into my bag. I spent many nights after that thinking about him. I replayed our conversations, our shared smiles, the gentle way he corrected my posture when I tried a piano chord incorrectly. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this was no ordinary crush. It was something stronger, something that would linger in memory long after these days ended. Our friendship, quiet as it was, became the highlight of my life. I began to dress a little differently, not to impress anyone else, but because I wanted to feel more alive when I was around him. I started listening to more music, practicing simple pieces on a small keyboard I had bought, just so I could share in his world a little more. And he noticed, not in a way that embarrassed me, not in a way that made me self-conscious, but in the small nods, the approving glances, the occasional questions about my progress. I started to feel braver in small ways. I spoke up more in the classroom. I laughed more freely. I discovered that the heart could grow even in the quietest of places, that love could teach courage without demanding it, that someone could see you, truly see you, and the world became richer for it. I didn't know yet that this was only the beginning, that the man behind the piano, calm and composed, had a way of changing lives quietly, that he would challenge me, inspire me, and eventually teach me that love could be gentle, patient, and healing. That my heart, the one I thought was too shy, too cautious, too small, was capable of so much more than I had ever imagined. And I didn't know, sitting in that music room, listening to the soft hum of his playing as rain tapped against the window, that in a few short months my world would open in ways I never thought possible. That the shy girl who only knew numbers and routine would find herself caught in the tender, intoxicating pull of a love that was patient, kind, and quietly transformative. That night, as I walked home with the rain soaking my coat and my hair clinging to my cheeks, I realized something I had never truly admitted to myself. I was falling in love with my music teacher. And it was the kind of love that changes a person from the inside out. Not loud, not dramatic, just profound, steady, and life-altering. The quiet pull. After those first weeks of cautious smiles and lingering glances, our days settled into a quiet rhythm. I began to look forward to the moments we shared, not just in the classroom, but in the small pockets of time that somehow became sacred to me. The music room, once merely a space I passed by, became a refuge. Every day, when I peeked inside and saw him at the piano, my heart would tighten and loosen all at once. It was a strange and wonderful feeling, one that made me both nervous and alive. I started leaving small things for him without thinking. A coffee cup on the edge of the piano, a notebook with sheet music I thought he might like, a little note tucked between the keys thanking him for his patience. He never commented directly, never acted as if he noticed more than anyone else would. But there were subtle signs, the slight tilt of his head, the faint smile, the way he lingered a little longer on my words when we talked. Those tiny gestures became my lifeline. One afternoon, I stayed late to practice on my own. The music room was dim, the afternoon sun cutting stripes across the floor. I struggled with a particular Chopin prelude, my fingers stumbling over the keys. Frustration bubbled up, and I slammed my hand down in exasperation. That's when I heard a voice behind me, soft but steady. "Don't force it," he said. I jumped, startled, my heart hammering. He leaned against the doorway, watching me with those deep, unreadable eyes. Let the music come to you. Don't chase it. Listen to it. Feel it. His words were simple, but the way he said them made something inside me shift. I swallowed hard and nodded, trying to calm the tremor in my fingers. He walked over and, without asking, adjusted my hand gently on the keys. The warmth of his touch lingered long after he stepped back. I couldn't look at him directly. I was too aware of the subtle pulse of electricity between us, the dangerous intimacy of a teacher so close, yet so careful. We didn't speak much after that. There was no declaration, no confession, just the quiet understanding that something unspoken had shifted. But the days after, I found myself practicing harder, lingering longer, hoping for another moment like that. And I wasn't ashamed, not entirely, because I had never felt this alive, this seen, this delicate sense of anticipation that made ordinary moments extraordinary. Winter arrived, and with it came the college's annual recital. Mr. Harrison was, of course, at the center of the preparations. His calm, authoritative presence seemed to steady everyone else, and I found myself helping more, taking notes, organizing students, even stepping outside my usual quiet role. He noticed, of course, and for the first time, he nodded directly at me with an expression that was not just approval, but something warmer, something that made my stomach flip. The night of the recital, the auditorium was packed. Students sat nervously, parents whispering, and the air smelled of polished wood and nervous excitement. I sat in the wings, my hands pressed together, my heart thrumming like a drum in my chest. When the program began, he guided each student with quiet patience, adjusting posture, encouraging breath, coaxing confidence. And then he turned to me. "You ready?" he asked softly. I nodded, unsure why he was speaking to me. "Come up," he said. I blinked. I'm not performing." He smiled, that small, secretive smile, and leaned closer. "I know, but I want you with me for a moment. Just stay by the piano." I obeyed, feeling my pulse spike. I stayed close as he played a brief piece for the audience, the notes rising and falling, warm and alive. He glanced at me once during the performance, and for a heartbeat, it felt like the rest of the room disappeared. I wasn't a student, a tutor, or just someone lingering in his world. I was seen, fully, quietly, completely. After a recital, we stayed behind to help clean up. The auditorium emptied slowly, leaving just the two of us. He turned to me, holding a stack of music sheets, and smiled in a way that was no longer just polite. It was personal. "You've been very helpful tonight," he said. I just wanted to help," I replied, trying to sound casual, though my voice trembled slightly. "I noticed," he said simply, "and I appreciate it more than you know." We walked back to the music room together, the campus nearly silent under the soft winter sky. Snowflakes drifted down, catching in our hair, and I felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and terror. I wanted to speak, to tell him everything, to reveal my heart in its entirety, but I knew I couldn't. It was too soon, too complicated, and yet every step beside him made my feelings more undeniable. Over the next weeks, our bond deepened quietly. He began leaving small notes on my desk, music recommendations, a reminder to eat lunch, a gentle question about my weekend plans. Every gesture was small, almost invisible to anyone else, but to me It was monumental. He was communicating without words the same way I had been trying to do for months, and it was intoxicating. One afternoon, as spring began to seep into the campus, he invited me to a piano lesson with a student who was struggling with rhythm. I arrived early, as usual, and found him sitting at the piano, his posture relaxed but his expression thoughtful. I handed him the student's sheet music, and for a moment we were just two people standing close together in a quiet room. "You're improving," he said softly, not to the student, but to me. I blinked. "Me?" "Yes. You've grown more confident. Your presence, the way you move through this space, is different, more assured." I felt my cheeks warm. I didn't realize you noticed." He smiled, not at me, but with me, as though sharing a secret. And in that smile, something inside me shifted further. It wasn't just admiration or attraction anymore. It was respect, intimacy, understanding. And perhaps, though I didn't dare say it aloud, it was the first spark of love that could survive the world outside this room. But love, even in its gentlest form, has a way of testing patience. One afternoon, a colleague from the math office came to visit, carrying questions about a scheduling conflict. I excused myself and walked toward the office, only to hear Mr. Harrison speaking sharply to someone, a tone I had never heard from him before. I froze. His voice was frustrated, impatient. My heart sank. I wondered if this was the man I had been idealizing, or if I had been blind to the complexity of his life. Later that evening, I found myself sitting alone in the music room, staring at the keys of the piano, trying to reconcile the image I had of him with the reality I had just seen. When he returned, he noticed my tension immediately. "Lena?" he asked. I, I just, I wasn't expecting." He sat down beside me, close enough that our knees nearly touched, and his voice softened. "I'm not perfect," he said. "I have a temper sometimes. I lose patience. I worry. I feel stress. I try to hide it, but I'm human." I nodded slowly. I, I know. I just, I guess I thought you were different." He smiled faintly, a touch of sadness in his eyes. "I'm different, yes, but not invincible, not always composed. You see me fully, Lena, not just the calm surface, but the undercurrents, the mistakes, the flaws. And that's okay. That's who I am." For the first time, I understood the depth of our connection. It wasn't based on perfection or fantasy. It was real, human, and deeply emotional. And that reality, as raw and imperfect as it was, made my feelings for him grow stronger. The following week, he invited me to help him prepare for a small recital outside the college, a benefit concert at a local community center. It was a risk, spending time together outside of school hours, but something inside me told me it was the right moment. We worked side by side, organizing sheets, setting up chairs, and practicing pieces. There were no other students, no distractions, just the two of us, talking quietly between rehearsals about life, music, dreams, and the little things that made us who we were. It was during one of these quiet moments that he paused, hands on the piano, and looked at me with an intensity that made my heart leap. "Lena, do you ever feel like life is offering you something you weren't expecting, something you can't quite define, but you know you want it?" I hesitated, then whispered, "Yes, all the time." He nodded slowly. "I feel the same, and sometimes I don't know what to do with it, but I also know that ignoring it isn't the answer." The words hung between us like a delicate thread, fragile yet unbreakable. And in that moment, I realized that our feelings were no longer confined to quiet glances or subtle gestures. There was something undeniable growing between us, a connection that was as tender as it was inevitable. That night, I walked home in the cool spring air, my mind a whirlwind of hope and fear. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was falling in love with him, and he somehow, subtly, gently, was falling for me too. The thought was thrilling and terrifying all at once. I knew the world outside our little bubble would never understand, but for the first time, I felt alive in a way I hadn't before. The journey was just beginning. There would be obstacles, doubts, and moments of hesitation. But I had begun to see that love, true, patient, healing love, wasn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was quiet. Sometimes it was slow. And sometimes it arrived in the small gestures, the fleeting smiles, the shared silences that said more than words ever could. The confession. Spring was in full bloom, the campus alive with the sound of students laughing, birds singing, and the faint rustle of leaves. I could feel it everywhere, the sense that something was changing, that life was shifting in ways I could not fully control. But nothing compared to the turbulence inside me. Every glance from Mr. Harrison, every casual touch when he adjusted my posture at the piano, sent my heart racing and my thoughts spinning. I knew with a certainty that frightened me that I was in love. And he was showing signs too. Not grand declarations or sudden gestures, but the quiet, deliberate attentions that made me feel seen in a way I had never felt before. My world had become a delicate dance of stolen moments and unspoken understanding, and I had grown addicted to the rhythm. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything came to a head. I had stayed late after lessons, practicing alone in the music room. My fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly as I replayed a piece I had struggled with for weeks. The door opened quietly behind me, and he stepped in, the soft click of his shoes against the wooden floor echoing in the otherwise empty room. "Lena," he said softly, approaching. "May I?" "Of course," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He sat at the piano beside me, his presence both grounding and exhilarating. For a few moments, we played in silence, each of us lost in the notes, the music weaving around us, binding us in an invisible thread of intimacy. Then he stopped, turned to me, and looked directly into my eyes. "I need to tell you something," he said. My heart skipped. You do?" He nodded, his gaze steady and sincere. "Yes, I can't keep it inside anymore." I swallowed hard, my hands curling into my lap. What is it?" "I've tried to ignore it," he admitted. "I told myself it was inappropriate, that I had to remain professional, that I couldn't let this happen, but I can't. Not with you." My breath caught. "You mean you feel the same?" "Yes," he said simply, a weight lifted from his shoulders. "I've tried not to. I've tried to keep it in check, but every day I feel more." Every moment we share, every conversation, every glance, it pulls me closer. Lena, I care about you more than I've cared about anyone in years. Tears blurred my vision. I had longed to hear these words, but now that they were spoken, my heart threatened to overflow. I care about you too, I whispered. I've been so afraid, but I do. I've cared for a long time. He reached out and gently took my hands in his touch warm and grounding. Then we have to be honest, Lena, honest about our feelings and about the choices we make. I want this, us, but only if it's real and only if it's mutual. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to make mistakes that we'll regret. I understand, I said, my voice trembling but firm. I want this too. I want you. But we need to be careful. We need to navigate this carefully. He nodded, squeezing my hands gently. We will. I promise. No rushing, no pressure, just us. Honestly, fully, carefully. That evening, we left the music room together, walking side by side under the soft glow of campus lights. The spring air was fragrant with flowers and new beginnings, and for the first time I felt a sense of possibility stretching out before me. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't simple, but it was real, and that was everything I needed. Over the next few weeks, our relationship unfolded like a delicate symphony. We found moments, small, precious moments, where we could be together without drawing attention. Early mornings before class, when we shared coffee and quiet conversation. Lunchtime walks in the blooming gardens, where laughter came easily and freely. Even brief glances across the room during lessons, a silent acknowledgement that we were connected in a way no one else could understand. But it wasn't without challenges. There were moments of doubt, fear, and hesitation. I worried about the judgment of others, about the complications of a relationship with my teacher. He worried about crossing boundaries, about protecting me and our shared professional space. Yet, despite these challenges, we were patient, careful, and determined. One evening, he invited me to his apartment under the pretense of reviewing some sheet music for an upcoming recital. The moment I stepped inside, I realized it was more than that. It was a sanctuary. Warm lighting, soft music playing in the background, and a sense of calm that I had never felt anywhere else. He offered me tea, and we sat together on the couch, our hands brushing occasionally, sending sparks up my arms. I want to be honest with you, Lena, he said, his voice gentle. I want you to know that my intentions are serious. I'm not here for fleeting moments or temporary feelings. I care about you. I want a future with you. But I also want to do this the right way. I want that too, I replied, my voice steady, though my heart raced. I want us. I want us to be real, honest, and lasting. But I need time too to understand everything, to navigate this. He nodded, his gaze unwavering. Then we take that time, together, slowly, carefully. But I want you to know I won't hide my feelings from you again. You're too important for that. And just like that, a weight I hadn't fully realized I was carrying lifted. The tension, the fear, the longing, all of it coalesced into something tangible, something that felt like hope. I leaned my head on his shoulder for a brief, quiet moment, and it felt like home. The next few months were a dance of careful closeness. We maintained professionalism in public, always respectful and attentive to our shared responsibilities. But in private, our bond deepened. We shared meals, music, books, and laughter. We supported each other in moments of stress and celebrated small victories together. Every conversation, every glance, every touch built the foundation of something enduring. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a crisp evening in early summer, the campus quiet, the streets empty. He had invited me to a small concert outside of the college, a local performance that was intimate and beautiful. After the performance, we walked in the garden, under the stars. I felt a nervous flutter in my chest, sensing that something significant was about to happen. He stopped, taking my hands in his. "Lena," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I don't want to wait any longer. I know we've taken our time and I've tried to be careful, but I need you to know something. Something I can't hold back." My heart pounded. "Yes?" I whispered. "I love you," he said, the words simple but monumental. "I've loved you for months, Lena. You've brought light, patience, and music into my life in ways I never imagined possible. I want to be with you not just here and now, but for all the tomorrows we can have. Will you be with me? Will you let me love you fully?" Tears blurred my vision, a mix of joy, relief, and overwhelming emotion. I could barely speak. "Yes, yes, I will. I love you too." I managed to whisper, my voice shaking with the weight of everything I had felt and longed for. He pulled me close, and for the first time there was no hesitation, no uncertainty, just the quiet, profound certainty of two hearts finding each other. The night air wrapped around us, the stars shining witness to a love that had grown patiently, silently, and now fully. In the weeks that followed, we told our closest friends and families, carefully navigating their reactions. Some were surprised, some skeptical, but most were supportive once they saw the sincerity in our bond. We found ways to balance our personal and professional lives, respecting boundaries while nurturing our love. The music room, once just a space for lessons, became a symbol of our journey of patience, respect, and the delicate unfolding of something beautiful. Every note we played, every shared glance, every quiet conversation strengthened the bond that had begun with simple gestures and grew into a profound, enduring love. Looking back now, I realize that every moment, the nervousness, the small victories, the quiet afternoons spent in the music room was leading to this. Love had arrived not with grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but quietly, patiently, persistently, until it could no longer be ignored. And in that love, I found not just joy, but courage, growth, and the promise of a future filled with music, laughter, and shared dreams. Now, as I sit at the piano with him beside me, the sunlight spilling across the keys, I feel a calm and deep happiness. Life is far from perfect, but it is ours. Every day brings new challenges, new joys, new music, and every day I am reminded that love, when it comes in the right form and at the right time, transforms everything. And so, this is our story, one of quiet beginnings, patient growth, and the enduring power of love that respects, nurtures, and heals. We learn to navigate life together, to honor each other's hearts, and to cherish the moments, both small and grand, that define a lifetime. Love, I learned, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it's in the shared smiles, the small touches, and an unspoken understanding that no one else can see. But when it's real, it changes everything. If you believe in love that grows quietly, patiently, and truly, so like and subscribe our channel and share this story and let someone know sometimes love finds you when you least expect it.